It's 4 p.m. on Wednesday, September 17th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. We begin the newscast with a press conference by the main opposition party's interim chief, Park Young-sung. Now, there were calls for her to step down, but she says she isn't going anywhere for now, at least. Park will stay to lead the New Politics Alliance for Democracy until the much contested special bill setting up an investigation into April's ferry disaster is settled. Members within her own party have been calling for her resignation, saying she mishandled negotiations with the ruling Saenuri Party on the ferry bill. Now, Park explained today that other veteran members of the party had advised her to stay on. The opposition plans to hold a meeting tomorrow to discuss nominating the heads of an emergency committee that will run the opposition until its party convention slated for early next year. So the standing committees at the National Assembly have restarted legislative activities on the Assembly Speaker's order, but nearly half the committee members are missing as the opposition continues to boycott over the ferry bill. Our National Assembly correspondent Kim Young-gil reports.
The National Assembly standing committees are back at work. They began reviewing pending bills Wednesday morning and now have a timetable for plenary sessions, government audits, and hearings for the next 3 months. But there's less certainty about how much lawmakers of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy will be participating. They continue to boycott all parliamentary proceedings over the unpassed special Seoul ferry bill.
If the ruling party unilaterally passes bills, it is merely prolonging the parliamentary impasse and abusing its authority. The Assembly Speaker has undermined his prestige by unilaterally deciding on the parliamentary session schedule.
With or without the participation of opposition lawmakers, the ruling party may proceed with voting on some 91 draft bills that have already been reviewed by both parties.
We have decided to proceed with legislative activities for the country and the people. We will continue our dialogue with the opposition party to normalize parliament.
In a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Park Geun-hye called on the opposition to accept a compromise bill on the Seoul ferry investigation that's been proposed by the ruling party. She also said she would not get involved as it's not within her constitutional powers to do so. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The annual UN General Assembly kicked off on Tuesday New York time with the general debate session set to take place next week. World leaders will flock to the city to discuss a wide range of topics, including North Korean human rights and countermeasures against Islamic terror groups. Hwang Sung-hee tells us more.
The United Nations General Assembly opened its 69th session at its New York headquarters on Tuesday. Addressing officials from the 193 member states, General Assembly President Sam Kutesa declared this year's theme of delivering on and implementing a transformative post-2015 development agenda. Next week, scores of heads of state and government will gather for the annual general debate, which will run from September 24th through October 1st. The lengthy list of topics includes poverty and hunger, persistent unemployment, violent armed conflicts, climate change, and more. Just in recent months, health systems in West Africa have been overwhelmed by an unprecedented Ebola outbreak, while new security challenges have emerged with acts of terrorism spreading fast in Iraq and Syria. U.S. President Barack Obama will host the UN Security Council summit next Wednesday to seek countermeasures against Islamic terror groups. A ministerial meeting on North Korea's human rights issue, presided by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, will also take place. President Park Geun-hye will take to the podium on the first day of the general debate and seek support for her vision for reunification and peace building in East Asia. North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong will also speak on the UN stage on Saturday. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
So the prospects of there being inter-Korean dialogue on the sidelines of the assembly is drawing attention. This all the more so as President Park tells Reuters that she would be glad to hold talks with Pyongyang. Choi Yoo-sun has more.
With North Korea still unresponsive about the South's proposed talks to improve ties, President Park Geun-hye, ahead of a trip to the UN General Assembly next week, left the door open to engaging with the North.
고위급 접촉을 제의한 데 대해서 좀 빨리 호응을 해서 대화를 하자 이렇게 말할 수 있는 기회가 있다면 좋겠습니다. 또 외교장관끼리 뭔가 그런 문제를 가지고 대화를 할 수 있는 기회가 있다면 그것도 뭐 바람직하다고 생각합니다.
Although officials from the two Koreas have no plans to meet on the sidelines at the UN, there's growing speculation that they may come in contact. North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Soo-yong, who is attending the global summit this year, is Pyongyang's highest-ranking official to do so in 15 years. Starting her second year in office, President Park has been seeking ways to normalize relations with the northern neighbor and for the two Koreas to prepare for reunification.
분단의 고통을 해소하고 극복하고 또 평화 통일 준비를 위한 것이라면 저는 누구하고도 대화를 할 수 있다고 생각을 합니다. 이제 여기서 중요한 것은 어떤 대화를 위한 대화보다도 진정성과 실천 의지라고 생각합니다.
The Korean president also had a message for the Shinzo Abe administration regarding Tokyo's whitewashing of having coerced Korean women into wartime sexual enslavement.
이분들에게 사과하고 또 명예를 온전히 이렇게 회복할 수 있도록 일본 정치 지도자들이 결단을 용기 있는 결단을 내리기를 바라고 있습니다. 또 그렇게 해야 경색된 양국 관계도 좀 푸는 지름길이 되지 않겠는가 봅니다.
Attention now shifts to President Park's diplomacy during her stay at the UN and what message she will have for regional neighbors in her first UN General Assembly address. Choi Yoo-sun, Arirang News.
The U.S. government is working its diplomatic channels to safely release 3 of its citizens currently detained in North Korea. According to Voice of America, the U.S. State Department has made it known that they would be open to sending a high-level diplomat to the North as soon as possible. Washington is also reportedly willing to send someone other than Special Envoy Robert King, who Pyongyang has now rejected twice from entering North Korea. Meanwhile, the South Korean military arrested a U.S. citizen they say was trying to swim across a river into the north late Tuesday night. The man, who reportedly appears to be in his early 30s, told officials that he wanted to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. And now to the latest on the fight against Islamic State militants. The United States has been limiting its military support to airstrikes in Iraq, but could that change? A top U.S. military officer has hinted at the possibility. Here's our Park Ji-won with more.
Speaking in a Senate committee room on Tuesday, Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey emphasized that there could be a scenario in which Washington would consider deploying ground troops to defeat Islamic State militants.
If there are threats to the United States, then I, of course, would go back to the President and make a recommendation that may include the use of U.S. military ground forces.
In response to Dempsey's remarks, the White House, Pentagon, and the State Department all reaffirmed the president's position that they have no intention of sending ground troops into Iraq in a combat role. Instead, they said U.S. troops will remain there in advisory roles only. So far, President Obama has repeatedly stated that there will be no American boots on the ground and that the U.S. will focus on airstrikes while other global coalition countries from Arab states take care of ground-based missions. Regardless of the U.S. military's future role, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel stressed the fight requires a concerted effort.
We're at war with ISIL as we are with al-Qaeda. But destroying ISIL will require more than military efforts alone. It will require political progress in the region and effective partners on the ground in Iraq in Syria.
U.S. has launched expanded airstrikes in Iraq this week in support of Kurdish and Iraqi troops confronting militants on the ground as they try to push back the advance of the Islamic State. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
U.S. President Barack Obama has called for a more concerted global response to contain the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. He has committed thousands of military personnel to affected regions where more than 2,400 people have died since the outbreak started earlier in the year. Connie Kim reports.
The United States is ready to take a leadership role in the fight against the deadliest ever Ebola outbreak in West Africa. Speaking at a briefing at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Tuesday, President Barack Obama unveiled plans to send more U.S. military personnel, train health workers, and build medical facilities. The announcement includes building 17 healthcare facilities equipped with 100 beds each, training up to 500 healthcare workers a week, and setting up a joint command post headquartered in Liberia's capital, Monrovia. The 3,000 troops that'll be deployed will provide training and engineering support to try and contain the epidemic that appears to be spiraling out of control. Obama also called on Congress to approve the additional financial support his administration requested. As of now, Washington has provided more than $100 million and the Pentagon is seeking to funnel an additional $500 million to deal with the crisis. Calling the outbreak a global security threat, Obama also requested a global response. He said proper steps taken in cooperation with other nations could save lives, but would have to come soon. With the number of Ebola-infected patients increasing at a rapid pace, the UN's fund request to contain the virus has jumped tenfold to $1 billion. On Thursday, the United Nations will announce the outline of its international action plan. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
There's one fundamental question that we should be asking ourselves on a regular basis, if not every day, but often fail to do so. So a global research firm asked people worldwide instead. Our Kim Ji-yeon tells us what that question is and also what the firm found out.
How happy are you? It's a question that may not have a simple answer, considering all the variables. But it's precisely the question that Gallup and Healthways, a U.S.-based health tracker, asked 130,000 people from 135 countries for their global well-being index. It found that the vast majority of people living in Korea are not all that happy. Less than 1 out of 5 Korean respondents saw that they were well off in most aspects of their lives. When asked how far along they were in achieving their long-time life goals, most respondents from Korea answered that they were struggling. Most also felt they were struggling with maintaining the relationships in their life. However, more than 35% said that they were thriving in terms of their financial well-being. In the remaining categories, such as sense of community and health, a majority of Korean respondents said that they were struggling as well. All in all, Korea came in 75th overall in the survey, well below neighboring countries like Taiwan and Japan, as well as other Asian countries such as the Philippines, Thailand, and India. Panama topped the list with more than 60% of respondents saying that they were thriving in more than 3 elements. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Following in Europe's footsteps, China is reportedly pursuing a quantitative easing policy to boost its economy in line with many stimulus measures announced earlier this year. Citing a Chinese official familiar with the matter, Bloomberg reports that the People's Bank of China is to inject around 500 billion Chinese yuan, or more than $81 billion of capital over a 3-month period. Now, this comes amid signs of an economic slowdown in China. Industrial production recorded growth of merely 6.9% in August, the lowest China has seen since the 2008 global financial crisis. In an announcement marking a milestone for commercial space projects, NASA said Tuesday that it had awarded contracts to Boeing and SpaceX for a space taxi project worth a combined $6.8 billion. The companies will develop space taxis that will ultimately transport American astronauts into orbiting laboratories, with the first such spacecraft projected to be ready by 2017. Currently, NASA uses Russian systems to travel to the International Space Station. Both companies will operate their equipment with considerably less federal oversight than previous programs. The word selfie was named the word of the year in the latest edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, but if you lived in Korea, you will know that the word was created about a decade ago. For more on what selfies say about us and whether they will stand the test of time, our Shin Se-min went out to the streets of Seoul.
First, let me take a selfie.
Immortalizing moments with our faces in them. Self-portrait photographs, better known today as selfies, know no geographical, gender, or age boundaries. The selfie craze has gone global in recent years.
Taking selfies are more convenient than having to ask other people. Also, I know which angles and poses best compliment me.
And riding the trend is this latest gadget, the so-called selfie stick, which gives photo takers an extra inch of arm length to make it easier to take the perfect selfie.
Sales of this meter-long pole this summer in Korea, owing in part to the surge of single vacationers, prove its popularity.
In the past month, we have seen a 20-fold increase in selfie stick sales, and the demand continues to rise.
So is this just an advanced way of taking selfies and indulging yourself in narcissistic moments? Some say it is. But it could be more than that in Korea. Koreans living in one of the world's most wired countries that's small enough to stay hyper-connected may feel the need to show the better sides of their faces and know which filter flatters them the most.
The selfies that are being taken by the majority of Koreans are hardly an act of narcissism. A small study of selfie takers shows that they are partly influenced by their own insecurities about their appearance. So they are taking selfies in a way they think is a good representation of them.
Love them or hate them, these selfie sticks are here to prove that the people want to be noticed and recognized. Until the day we find some other means to present ourselves, we've got our smartphone cameras and these sticks. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on Arirang.
The anticipation mounts as Asia's largest sporting event will kick off in Korea's Incheon this Friday. Thousands of athletes from the region will be aiming for gold at the 17th Asian Games. Our Song Ji-sun checks in on the athletes and the plans for opening night as well.
Athletes from all over Asia are descending upon Incheon as the clock ticks toward the opening ceremony of the 17th Asian Games on Friday. South Korea's biggest team ever, at over 8,000 athletes and officials, have already begun unpacking in Incheon, while North Korea's main ASEA delegation arrived on Tuesday. The North delegation will hold a flag-raising ceremony at the Athletes Village at 10 a.m. on Thursday, while the South Korean athletes will hold their own at 4 p.m. As for today's action, South Korea's men's and women's football squads will hold their second preliminaries at 8 p.m. against Saudi Arabia and India, respectively. In the meantime, the South baseball team, which is defending its title from Gwangju 2010, began training for their first game against Thailand on Monday evening. The Korean Baseball Organization is taking a 2-week break to allow for its players to compete in the Asian Games. KBO action will pick back up at the start of next month with the home stretch for the race toward the playoffs. South Korean fencer Nam Hyun-hee and archer Oh Jin-hyo will be representing the 13,000 participants on the opening night of the Asian Games 2014. But we still don't know who will be lighting the Asian Games torch at the opening ceremony.
The flame has been traveling around Korea for a month now and will be passed around the host city of Incheon on Wednesday before finding a new home at the main stadium on Friday. 송지선, Arirang News.
You know, it's autumn when Korea's royal palaces start leaving their doors wide open for visitors well into the night. Well, one of the palaces that has started extending its visiting hours to 10 p.m. is Changgyeong Palace. Kim Min-ji takes us there.
Soft ambient lighting sweeps over Changgyeong Palace. Friends and families take in the beauty of the royal palace. Lovers follow the trails once used by kings and queens, while others simply capture the moment on camera.
It's great. The light really brings it out. It brings out the architecture in the dark.
It's my first visit at night. I'm happy that I get to show such beautiful places to my boyfriend.
Cheongsa-chorong, or traditional Korean lanterns, are placed around the palace grounds, amplifying the beauty of the royal structures. Visitors sit around the palace, sharing their stories as the night deepens.
The palace is extremely beautiful, and we are enjoying the quiet and gentle atmosphere here.
Although tickets for the night tours are no longer available online, foreigners and the elderly can buy tickets on site for 1,000 won, or about $1. Changgyeong Palace will remain open until 10 p.m. through Sunday, September 28th. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
It's not unusual for stores to play classical music for their customers, but what about a live orchestra performance? As our Im Yoon-hee reports, one such event took place at one of Seoul's busiest shopping centers. Take a look.
It's known as Korea's shopping mecca, but Myeongdong is now also a stage for a romantic classical concert. The music from dozens of instruments floated into the open air on Tuesday, stopping passerbys in the midst of their shopping excursions. From the whimsical solo of a violinist to an effervescent xylophone spectacle, the Eurasian Philharmonic Orchestra gives these shoppers a new type of experience.
By chance, it was my wedding anniversary, so I came out with my wife, child, and in-laws. Lucky for us, we were able to experience this classical music concert.
It's my first time here, and I think it's a very good idea to promote this kind of music in the society today. I feel really good. I feel some energy in my body.
This is the first time I'm seeing something like this, and it's really lifting my spirits.
The members of the Eurasian Philharmonic have been sharing their music with audiences since 1998, led by world-renowned conductor Kim Nan-se. And though they're usually on a formal stage, for the first time they've taken to the streets, bringing a classical music experience to the general public.
I want to give people what they want and make them happy. I can do all this in the streets and even give people a new cultural experience.
Live classical music doesn't have to be out of reach. In fact, you might just find it around the corner while out on a simple shopping errand. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. It's looking cloudy today here in Korea with cooler daytime highs ranging in the low to mid-20s. And comparing to yesterday's highs, the temperatures have dropped about 3 degrees over in Seoul and over more than 4 degrees in Daegu, which is greater than the average. Now, along with these temperature drops, rain is in the forecast for some regions in Gyeongsangnam-do province. And due to the easterly moving winds, Gangwon-do province and Jeju Island can expect rain starting this afternoon until tomorrow, totaling up to 20 millimeters. And these cloudy and wet conditions will continue all throughout the week for these regions, so make sure to have your umbrellas handy. Now, going over to our temperature readings. Seoul will peak at 24 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan is in the mid-20s at 24 and 26 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island peaks to 26 as well, while Dokdo and Mangkeungang is a bit cooler at 22. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
And that brings you to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more at 6 p.m. Korea time.